myself, chairing Edmund Hinkson, Member of Parliament, Senior Counsel. Sorry? Okay. Apologies for a slightly late start and for keeping you waiting, all right? So, state your name, ma'am, for the records.
Honorable members of both houses, members of the Joint Select Committee, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Janine Butcher.
And you're giving your testimony by Zoom, so I'm assuming you're not in Barbados?
Not currently.
Okay, so where are you residing?
I reside in Barbados, just I'm not there currently.
You live in Barbados, okay.
Yes.
All right. And what's your occupation? For the record.
Customer service representative.
Sorry?
Customer service representative. Can you hear me?
Customer service representative. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, Ms. Butcher. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Before beginning, I would like to state that I spoke to young persons about their views on this bill and incorporated what they said into my presentation. I am also no expert this morning, but just someone who utilizes a social media platform. Today, we gather here to address an issue that strikes at the very heart of our future. Challenges facing globalization into this technological world.
Sorry, Ms. Butcher,
Yes,
just
please?
maybe come closer to the mic because you're a bit muffled. So maybe come a bit closer so we can hear you clearly.
Okay. You can hear me better now?
Yes, we can hear you a bit better now, yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'll start back from. We hear when they said it was no expert, right? Because I saw Pearson stating what they did previously in the presentations. You can hear me?
Yes, go ahead,
Okay.
proceed.
Okay, so today we gather here to strike at the heart of our future. Challenges facing globalization into this technological world is analysis of the establishment of the Cybercrime Bill 2024, which will be the future cornerstone of how we interact and communicate among each other, especially among the youth that love social media. This Cybercrime Bill 2024 encompasses a comprehensive legal framework to address various offenses related to cyber activities, providing authorities with the tools to investigate, prosecute, and deter cybercrime. I am in agreement of many things here, and that is it is necessary to have this open discussion, that if changes are needed for this bill, it be considered. And finally, that cybercrime is real and active in our daily lives. Many countries in the Caribbean have introduced this type of bill, in which they had to go back to the drawing board to change, shift, and at some point, delete the entire aspects that breaches our human rights laws that we in the region have signed on to. For instance, in Trinidad, when it was first introduced in May 2015, the cybercrime bill was heavily criticized by media and human rights organizations, including Center for Law and Democracy, for vague and overboard content offenses, which would have prohibited a range of innocuous, normal, or even beneficial online activity. Despite some minor revisions, the current versions of the cybercrime bill still suffered from these problems from its new one passed again in 2017. Also, in Jamaica, Cybercrimes Act of 2010, 2015, and 2021 is undergoing review and amendment as the need increases for integrating laws concerning cybercrimes. On the face of it, this sounds simple enough and is a bill most citizens would support to protect themselves from potential harm where these types of laws are not in place. However, there is a delicate balance to ensuring we retain and encourage technology students and professionals to innovate and experiment. As a result, I am proud of our nation for taking our time, doing our research, and talking to a larger community to figure out why and what aspects of this bill hinder Barbados' development on how we balance our rights, versus the crime. Today, I will tackle two important areas of the Cybercrime Bill of 2024. This include police force law enforcement. While this legislation aims to empower law enforcement in combating cybercrime, it must be carefully crafted to respect individuals' rights to controlled access to their information. Procedural safeguards, judicial oversight, and transparency are key elements in achieving this balance. Potential for abuse. There might be concerns about the potential for abuse of the legislation for political or personal reasons. The expansive powers given to law enforcement agencies should be carefully balanced to prevent misuse. Indeed, the potential for abuse is a critical consideration when assessing legislation, especially when it grants expansive powers to law enforcement agencies. Here's an analysis of the potential for abuse in the context of discussed legislation and some recommendations to be put in place for Parliament to consider. Political interference. Given the broad scope of the legislation, there may be concerns that it could be used to stifle political dissent. Therefore, safeguards in the law should be in place to prevent the legislation from being misused to target individuals expressing legitimate political concerns or opinions, thus upholding the principles of free speech. Selective enforcement. The legislation must be applied uniformly and without discrimination. There should be safeguards to prevent selective enforcement based on political affiliations, personal vendettas, or other non criminal motivations. Hopefully, everything goes being unbiased. Whistleblower protections. Whistleblowers play a crucial role in exposing wrongdoing. The legislation should include provisions to protect whistleblowers who may be disclosing information in the public interest. This prevents the legislation from being used against individuals seeking to expose corruption or misconduct. Oversight mechanisms. Establishing independent oversight bodies separate from law enforcement agencies can help mitigate the risk of abuse. These bodies can review the application of the legislation, investigate complaints, and ensure that powers are exercised within the bounds of the law. Clear legal standards. Offenses outlined in the legislation should be clearly defined to prevent arbitrary or subjective interpretation. Clear legal standards help ensure that law enforcement actions are based on objective criteria, reducing the potential for abuse. Judicial review. Providing avenues for judicial review of law enforcement actions is essential. This allows individuals to challenge the legality of searches, seizures, or other actions, ensuring that the judiciary acts as a potential on abuse. Protections of minority rights. Safeguards should be in place to protect the rights of minority groups. The legislation should be used disappropriately against specific communities, ensuring that the rule of law is applied impartially. Transparency and accountability. Regular reporting to the application of the legislation, including the number of nature of cases, contributes to transparency. Public awareness of law enforcement activities help deter abuse and hold authorities accountable. International human rights standards. Ensuring that the legislation aligns with our human rights standards helps establish a framework that respects fundamental rights and freedoms. Compliance with established norms reduces the risk of misuse. In conclusion, safeguards such as independent oversight, clear legal standards, and protection for whistleblowers are essential to mitigate the potential for abuse associated with legislation that grants extensive powers to law enforcement agencies. Therefore, let us reflect on these vital questions in terms of the police force, law enforcement, and engagement in this bill. Thank you for allowing me to make this contribution. However, I do have a few questions in closing. And they are, how much would it cost the police force to establish this new department to combat crime? How much will it cost the country's taxpayers in terms of police manpower? What will the cost of implementing resources and equipment be? Is the police force willing to participate in this bill? Can we manage our national crime versus our online crime? And those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Butcher. Must say that two other members of the committee have just joined us. Welcome, Senator Gregory Nichols and Senator the Honorable Lyndon Nurse. Okay. Now, as regards your questions, Ms. Butcher, this is a committee of Parliament. In other words, this is a standing committee of the legislature. Under our system of government, as I'm sure you know, we have separate arms of government that make up, our governance structure. So therefore, the questions that you have posed are not within the ambit of this committee or legislature. I'm not saying they're not very relevant or pertinent questions, Ma'am. I mean, how much it will cost the police to set up, a cybercrime department to investigate alleged breaches of the legislation when enacted by Parliament. Pertinent question, but that is not within the ambit. So you will have to carry your questions somewhere else, Ma'am. You could appreciate, all right? You spoke in terms of the oversight, and someone, at least one person, I think, who sent in a written submission, spoke about what they perceived as the need for an oversight body as well. How you perceive such an oversight body would work? No.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Sorry, did you hear the question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Let's have my comment. Sorry about that. Right. So your question was how an oversight body will work from my point of view.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. As I was stated, in terms of establishing independent oversight bodies separate from the law enforcement agencies itself.
Right, but wouldn't that just add to the bureaucracy of the situation?
I don't understand the question.
No, because you're now talking about another body separate from law enforcement. I mean, you also have the judiciary that is there, that, once someone is charged, will have to hear the case and make a judgment on the matter. So isn't that sufficient oversight and bureaucracy? Why do you want to add another layer of bureaucracy to a situation?
In terms of being unbiased and in terms of like the manpower, which I would have stated as well. So the body that you're speaking of has efficient manpower to oversee the cybercrime bill alone, as well as the other crimes that we have in Barbados as well.
No, but like I said, we're a legislative body. I'm sure that once the bill is passed, enacted, that those with responsibility of the police department would adjust and operationalize the matter. All right? Okay. But as I said, that's not for us to be concerned with here. Okay?
Understood.
Any members would wish to engage Ms. Butcher? No? Okay. Okay, Ms. Butcher, we thank you. Your Testimony is, of course, on record and will be part of the report of this committee. So we thank you for your engagement with us and for your keenness to be part of this process. Okay?
Thank you for having me.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Mr. Lewis, your turn to engage us, sir, and to have the floor for 10 minutes. You can come and sit down here, sir. Morning. So, Mr. Lewis, for the record, you could state your name and your occupation. And, okay, you have the mic so that, no, press it. Press it, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Victor Lewis, and what's the other bit of information? Occupation, I'm retired.
Okay, good. You can come a bit closer. So, you have 10 minutes, sir, of oral presentation, and then as you heard just now, you have 10 minutes of oral presentation, and then any member can engage you on anything you've said.
That's fine. You can start anytime. Again, good morning to everyone. I'm of the view that checks and balances are important for the development of our country. The ability to take any computer device, capture information, and publish it is healthy, even amongst Spain, in the interest of development of Barbados. This attitude in the formulation of this bill seeks to criminalize free speech. And in my view, this is not in the best interest of the development of our country. Could we imagine Darnella Fraser, a 17-year-old teenager, standing on the streets of the United States, having a fear of imprisonment or fine? We would not have heard that cry, "I can't breathe." There are many Darnella Frasers in our country. Let's not drive fear into our people, but let us create an environment where our people can freely ventilate their feelings. I want to turn to the document, the crime bill, page number 1. And this is what I downloaded, so I'm of the view that in downloading it from the internet, that I have a legitimate document. It starts off with the heading, Objects and Reasons. I'm of the view that that particular statement is very questionable. I'm of the view that this document should start off with objectives. And clearly, this document in the first page should be separated, not reasons and objects. I don't know what you mean by objects. It ought to be objectives. Any objective.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes,
I'm trying to follow you. Where are you looking as
I'm looking at
support for what you just said?
I'm looking at the document that I downloaded, And it
Yeah.
starts off with, this bill will provide for, and at the heading has objects and reasons. Objects and reasons.
So the bill itself doesn't have that. And I can get you back your time, sir. You can appreciate that there's, okay, objects and reasons. But sir, that is a drafting, that is drafting, sir. Okay, you mean
But,
right
sir,
at the front.
Sir, whether it's a draft
No,
or not.
no, sir. Hold on, no, sir. Listen to me. That is how the drafters, legislative drafting is an art. That's the course that all law students take. And then there are people who specialize in legislative drafting. And that is how, in Barbados, sir, all bills that come before Parliament have at the front objects and reasons. So that is a legal technicality, drafting technicality, sir. And I don't know if you're an attorney at law, sir, but all attorneys at law, and there are right now 3. There are 4 in here, including a representative of the Chief Parliamentary Council who would explain to you as to, how it is done in Barbados.
Hi, thank you very much, Chairperson. Just to clarify that the objects and reasons, this is more or less standard in all pieces of legislation, all bills. The same way you would have an arrangement of sections or parts. So this is a consistent drafting style, and this is seen universally. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm of the view that that as a heading drives the content. I'm of the view that that as a heading informs the content. And if you would just give me some time, let me just scroll back to that document. Because I heard on the radio Ms. Carroll, who spoke on this document. And what was said to me was confusing. Because when we look at item B in that first page, it says the protection of legitimate interest in the use and development of information technologies. But when Ms. Carroll spoke on the media, she said protect legitimate interest and development. Those 2 statements are clearly ambiguous. They do not mean the same thing. So I'm saying that when we have this document that is classified as the cybercrime bill, it ought then to drive content so that people are not misguided. So when we read objects and reasons, these objects and reasons must be clearly defined, not only the objectives, but also those enablers that will drive the objectives, those tools that will be mobilized in order to achieve these objectives. I want to go on to 19(1)(a). A person who intentionally or recklessly uses a computer system to publish, broadcast, or transmit computer data that intimidates a person. Intimidates by this document is said to mean a reasonable person. A reasonable person is one who is acting within the law. Then my question is, if a reasonable person is deemed to be such a person who's acting within the law, then manipulation of the law gives an individual the opportunity to make a reasonable person unreasonable and an unreasonable person reasonable, just by the manipulation of the law. So that then we want to consider what has happened in our country of late. When we change town and country planning, to planning and development, where once we had a head or a chief town planner, but now we have the Prime Minister of Barbados in charge of planning and development, where that individual can manipulate the laws of Barbados. So when any person has been given the opportunity to manipulate the laws of our country, that person then, in the manipulation of those laws, can change a reasonable person to an unreasonable one.
Okay, Mr. Lewis.
Yes, sir.
For the records, I have to correct you, sir. I can't let something that is absolutely erroneous go on the records of a parliamentary standing order. Sorry, it's parliamentary standing committee. First thing, sir, the Prime Minister of Barbados, and we're talking about the office, not the individual, cannot manipulate any department that oversees town planning. First thing, the minister in charge of planning right now is not the Prime Minister, it's Senior Minister William Duguid. But historically, since independence, virtually every person who has held the office of Prime Minister has been minister in charge of planning, except for a short period of time when now Ambassador Senator Liz Thompson was Minister of Planning under the Owen Arthur administration for, I think it was 2 years. And now with Senior Minister Duguid being Minister of Planning since last year, April. But, and under our system, a Minister of Government has ultimate responsibility over any department that they have cabinet responsibility over. But if you were to read, sir, legislation that was passed in 2020 or 2019, you will see the checks and balances involved in terms of planning decisions. There's also a tribunal and there's an appeal process, all of that, sir, without a minister becoming involved. So I can't let what you said erroneously go on the record of Parliament without correcting you, sir. And there's no difference now to the situation than it was previously in terms of ministerial ultimate responsibility in terms of planning.
That's it, sir. May I continue? Yes. Thank you very much. Now, when I consider the pledge of our country, that I must uphold and defend, and by my living to do credit to my nation wherever I go. When I go to St. Michael, for example, and I examine what's happening on the train track, I, as a Barbadian, realize that the application of the laws in that area appears to be different to the application of the laws in St. Joseph. So I'm confused. Nevertheless, let me go to my final item. And this is 23.1 in the document. Reasonable grounds that a crime is about to be committed. How ambiguous that statement can be. Reasonable grounds that a crime is about to be committed. I'm not only retired, I'm a retired educator and a retired police officer. And I'm of the view, how am I to interpret that a crime is about to be committed? On April 24th, 2023, at 11:57 p.m., my cameras captured a police vehicle by my house. I live in a cul-de-sac. At the end of the cul-de-sac, you have to drive off the paved road to get to my house. At that same time, around that same time, I made several videos. And I don't know if a police officer felt emboldened by this document that they have the right to turn up at my house with a view that a crime was about to be committed.
Okay.
This document.
Mr. Lewis, your time is up. So
Thank you very much, sir.
please, one sentence to wrap up.
In Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, there's coming a time of trouble, such as never was. That time is coming, where AI will be dwarfed. How will a cybercrime bill address a situation in that period of time? Truth must not only be seen to be absolute, not qualified, absolute. Let us depend on the word of God to drive the cybercrime bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any members wish to question or engage Mr. Lewis on anything he said? Mr. Lewis, two things.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to comment on what Mr. Lewis would have said last about a crime about to take place. I think those were the words used, which were, yes, that words within the bill. And I'm going to discuss with you and answer the question I asked Mr. Stewart at the end of his presentation last week.
Your name, sir?
My name is Ramel Springer.
Ramel Springer. Go ahead.
Now, you are aware of cyber grooming, yes?
Yes,
The concept of using social media, using the internet, using WhatsApp, what have you, to lure young girls, young females, young boys, whatever you're into. Lure them into locations for the purpose of engaging in some kind of prurient activity with them. All right? Now, at some point, at some point the crime is not yet committed, but you can see that the buildup is there. You can see that the person is making plans, they're talking to the young child, they're telling them how they look, they're giving them compliments, they're you know, and then they're arranging to meet them, and they want to see them, and they miss them, and all these things they're saying, all with the view, at some point, to get that young child, young boy or girl, to meet them in some place in the physical space, so they can engage in period activity with that person. Now, isn't that a crime about to be committed? And isn't that something that police should be able to get a handle on, arrest, before it even happens? Or should we wait until the child is raped or engaged in some sexual activity for police to take action and a report is made? Is that what you're suggesting, that police shouldn't have that flexibility, that the law shouldn't have that flexibility to arrest a situation like that before it occurs?
I spent some 30-something years in teaching. I was a year head. I was in charge of many students. I'm aware that the whole idea of this aspect of pornography and computer crime became part of the laws of Barbados in 2005. This is 2024, 19 years after. We are well aware that this dimension has been addressed by the government of Barbados to protect the people of Barbados. But I would have a big difficulty when my children cannot go into a river and play. That is something now that I must seek to protect. We have already put systems in place to protect our children against cybercrime. When it comes to pornography, that is all news, Mrs. Springer. Let me get to a point now where we have rivers in Barbados, that our children can freely go and play. When we have developers coming to our country to prevent them from enjoying the rivers. At Allen School, we had a department called, for the whole interest of the community. When we talk about the environment, So we had an environmental group where students can freely go over to Long Pond and enjoy themselves, freely go over to Joe's River and enjoy themselves.
But Mr. Ford, what does that have to do with the cybercrime bill?
But he's
Please,
asked-
no, sir.
Oh.
Refine your comments and your response to the cybercrime bill, sir. This is not a forum for you to vent on what you see as the wrongs of Barbados society. Cybercrime bill, please, on mutual
Well, let me say
assistance.
to the gentleman that that's old. We have dealt with that since 2005.
Sir, in all due respect, I'm not speaking about pornography. I said nothing about pornography. I'm talking about cyber grooming. I'm talking about luring young boys and girls by way of social media or internet or WhatsApp. That's what I was referring to.
When you talk about
Luring.
sir, luring means that you're using social media, you're using internet, you're using Facebook, to pretend that, you are a nice 19-year-old or boy, as the case may be, when you are 60-something years old. That is luring. That is using social media. That's using computer systems. That has been dealt with since 2005. That's all I'm trying to say.
What I'm saying to you, I don't think you understood exactly what I was getting at. The idea of systems in place, of legislation in place, to treat these things before they get to the physical stage.
But I'm
Before they
saying
even
that
happen.
legislation was
Yeah.
in place since 2005.
Before they even happen.
But since 2005, sir, that has been there. That's nothing new. What we're dealing now with new is other things that affect our children, that affect the children of our schools, that affect children at any school, that affects children at the primary. Those are the things that we have got to deal with now. Those tools are already in place to address that long time ago.
Where in that 2005 legislation speaks to cyber grooming?
But you need to know.
Because you're making the claim.
You can go back to the act and quite
You're making the
fine.
claim that is there. You're making the claim in response to what you said, which is my question that simply asks, why shouldn't the law have the ability to intercept these things before they even occur?
But sir, you could go and read the Computer Misuse Act. It is there, it is clear. We don't have to deliberate on that in the 10 minutes that I have here. Of course, we can deal with it in another forum. But certainly, it is there, Computer Misuse Act. That is not rocket science.
You're not going to answer my question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other members wish to engage? Mr. Ford, just one. Mr. Lewis, sorry. Just one more query I'm going to ask you. You started by saying, sir, you made a very fiery statement that this bill will curtail freedom of speech, free speech. You said exactly. Please point me to the section in the bill which will criminalize, that's the word you use, free speech. Point the section.
You would appreciate, sir, that, there are certain conditions on which I speak. But I say,
What conditions, sir?
well, those things that are before the court.
Sorry?
Those things that are before the court.
No, sir, I am absolutely not understanding you. I
All right.
asked you, you made a very blatant, fiery statement. And I would like you to assist this committee by pointing to the provision in the bill which supports your statement that the bill will criminalize free speech. Straightforward, sir.
Yeah, I know, it's very straightforward, no problem. So let's go to 19.
I thought it would be at your fingertips, sir.
No,
I didn't think that you would have to now go looking for it.
I've got to roll back my computer. I don't have that printed out. Why should I
Oh,
print that out?
no, sir.
Let me just
Tell
roll
us.
my computer. Give me a few seconds here. Let me just roll. I think it's 1991. Let me just roll. I said I would have made several videos over the course of time. And after making those videos, I received several threats, not from Barbados, from outside of Barbados, from developers. Threats to the extent that I would capture information, and I don't want to be specific, but of course I told you I'm from St. Joseph. I enjoy Joseph and other places.
Sir, I asked you a specific question. I didn't ask you where you come from.
All right, fair enough, sir. Let me just continue to roll. here.
19.1a, sir.
19.1, well, let me just deal with 19.1. 19.1.
Yeah.
A person who intentionally or recklessly is a very ambiguous or derogatory statement, however. A person who intentionally...
No, you don't have to read it, sir. We know it. 19.1a.
So I took my cell phone, captured information as to what was happening at George River in St. Joseph. I broadcasted it. And then I received threats from the developer.
No, sir. What happened with you and the developer,
all right, fair
that
enough,
is
sir.
Irrelevant to this committee. You're saying that 19.1a criminalizes free speech in Barbados. So therefore, you believe that an individual should be allowed to intimidate a person, to threaten violence on them, to threaten to kill them, to damage their property, to damage the property of their family, intentionally, sir. In other words, they have the mental capacity to do that, or recklessly, by way of a computer, and should be able to get away with it.
I don't know what you mean by kill.
Well, no,
I don't
sir.
know.
How you mean kill, sir? Kill is a normal word. I can kill you
Kill means to take
today.
life, so I'm not going to use
You
that word.
feel that someone should be able to use computer to tell someone that I can kill you today, I can kill your mother today, and that is okay with you. No, yes or no, sir? That don't need no long answer.
I can't answer yes or no.
You can't answer.
No,
okay, sir. All right. That's no problem.
Yes no.
You can't answer.
Not yes or no. I can answer, but I can't answer yes or no.
No, it's a simple yes or no.
No, that's not
answer,
simple.
sir.
When you ask a question, you must give individuals the space in order to give the answer they want
All
to
right,
give.
sir.
I will not be forced into yes or no. We've passed that stage in our
So
development.
what answer you want to give?
Now, I want to give, if I'm given the floor then to respond, I will respond. But not yes or no.
What? Let me hear your response then, sir.
Thank
to
you
that
very much.
question.
Could you repeat your question, sir?
I thought I repeated it already. That you said section 19.1a criminalizes free speech. And all I'm asking you, therefore, is if you believe that an individual, somebody should be allowed to tell Victor Lewis, I'm going to kill you today, I'm going to kill your mother, I'm going to burn down your house, kill your daughter, and get away with it. That should not be subject to criminal law.
I can't deal with extreme examples.
No, sir.
Those are extreme examples.
No, okay,
you know?
but
So
you have answered the question, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. So we thank you for your.
I just want to clear one thing for the record, because he quoted the Computer Misuse Act. I just want to state for the record that there's no provisions in that act for cyber grooming. I don't know where you read it, but I read the entire act. It's not there.
It's not there.
No. So,
in specific terms.
well, this act, given specifics.
There are periods,
It's
sir,
not there.
whether in Pacific terms or not, it
Yeah.
is not there. So we thank you, sir, for your evidence today. Good morning. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to add something with your permission.
Sure.
All right, reference is made to the line or the provision in the legislation about a crime being committed or is about to be committed. That is currently the law, Section 23 of the Computer Misuse Act. The other thing that Mrs. Springer would have raised in relation to giving police the investigative tools or the ability to intercept any possible threats. So you gave an example about child grooming, but also the case, for example, where a hacker may say, well, we're going to give the government X period, otherwise we're going to attack all of its critical information systems. In a case like that, the police would rightly believe that a crime is about to be committed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good, sir. Next person is sure. Okay. Welcome, Senator Walters, today. Good morning. No, I thought we have to see her here. Ready? Good morning, Miss Cole. Can you hear me? Miss Cole? Why is she not responding? Okay. Good morning, Miss Cole. Can you hear me? Miss Cole, is your audio on? She disappeared. No. What happened here? Oh. Oh, her time was 11:45, so you want to give her?
Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello, Miss Cole.
Yes, can you hear me?
You're hearing us now. Yes,
Yes,
you've come on
sorry
earlier
about that.
you've come on earlier than we said you would. So we thank you for that. Welcome to the hearing on the cybercrime bill and the mutual assistance in criminal matters amendment bill. Before the Governance and Policy Committee of Parliament, Standing Committee. We have here 5 members of the committee, in fact 6 members of the committee, including the Honourable Leader of the Opposition and Senator Ryan Walters, the Honourable Lyndall Nurse, Senator, the Honourable Peter Phillips, Member of Parliament, Senator Gregory Nichols, and myself, Edmund Hinkson, Member of Parliament. So we're going to permit you 10 minutes, ma'am, to speak on either of these 2 bills or both of them. You know, your comments on them, whatever you wish to say on them that is of relevance, ma'am. And then members will be given the opportunity to engage you on anything you've said. So your name for the records.
Heather Cole.
And where are you right now, ma'am? You're in Barbados
In
or
New York.
overseas?
No, New York City.
So you live in New York?
Correct.
Okay, ma'am. What's your occupation for the records?
I'm a budget analyst.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, so you have 10 minutes.
All right. And I will read my submission, and it is in relation to the cybercrime bill. My primary cause for concern, or one of them rather, I have 3. Last Monday, the 6th of May, I listened to Mr. Stephen Williams in his presentation to this committee. And when he was being questioned after his presentation, he spoke stating that he hoped.
Okay, Miss Cole, just hold a bit because it's coming through very loud. So, okay, Miss Cole. It was coming through very loud, so speak again.
All right. But let me try again.
Okay, so we're good now. We're good now. That's good volume.
Great. As I listened to Mr. Williams last Monday, when he was being questioned, he spoke that he hoped that the Great Firewall of China was not the way that the police intended to go. And Mr. Williams was the government's consultant on this project, and he went to China to get first-hand information. So at that point, I made a note that he's referenced the Great Firewall of China. And later I went back to the bill and I saw no mention of surveillance and detention within the bill. And in China, the surveillance and detention go hand in hand. One does not happen without the other. And then I look at section 23, from section 23.3, as well as sections 24 and 25. And I'm referring to the cybercrime bill. And neither of these sections state what happens to any person after the search or prior to an appearance in court. All right, and let me go on. And it appears that the consultant is unaware of the outcome of his project, even though he was the technocrat and even though he was a technocrat, he would have had the best recommendations to give to government. And at this point in time, I know that the word hope is a bad word in Barbados, so therefore I had no hope in Mr. Williams's hope, because right now in Barbados, hope is reference to mean things like wastage, misuse of funds and corruption, etc. So again, having heard the consultant use the Great Firewall of China, I explored it for what it is, a heavily surveillance police society in which no one or nothing can happen except the police knowing. All of the internet traffic, both in and out, must pass through the police. And in China, China is also a society where they use an ID that is similar to the Trident ID, and it is a method of surveillance control. And surveillance and detention centers go hand in hand in China. I mentioned that just now. And so based on his revelation based on the revelation of the consultant, I now wonder if the government of Barbados is planning to build or has already built a mass detention center in Barbados. If this is true, this bill will become a warrant for torture and death in detention for the sons and daughters of Barbados. Mr. Williams' revelation, in my opinion, was like a missing piece of the puzzle. So I now wonder if Barbados is about to become a police state. And I am assured I am, as well as all Barbadians, would want to join me to insist that the government of Barbados address this before it proceeds, because I don't think that we should be welcoming Chinese slavery in Barbados. That is my first concern. And the next one is the Constitution. We have awaited the Constitution, the new Constitution, for quite some time. And I wonder now if the new cybercrime bill was being put in place to be followed by the Constitution, or if the Constitution was waiting for the Trident ID as well as the cybercrime bill to be in place, then for the government to present it. And I wonder how, if that is the case, how this will affect the freedoms of expression that are currently available in Barbados. So technically in this area, there are too many unknowns. And I also wonder, for example, if it could be unconstitutional to protest in marches. And the next piece of my presentation is references me personally. I was a victim of cybercrime, and that was committed against me in 2018. I came to Barbados and I gave a statement to the police. And on the morning of the second day, I went back to the police station again. And upon leaving the room where I was being interrogated, I heard the station sergeant I overheard him tell someone on the telephone, "The woman here." And as I passed his desk and he realized that I was passing, he lowered his voice. And he quickly ended his conversation. So I had no idea who he was speaking with. And the police took my phone, and it was not ready by the time I was ready to leave the island the next week. So I went back for it. And subsequently, I sent it back to Barbados in the following month. And it was to be collected from the Worthings police station, but that never happened. I came back to the island the next year. I went to the Worthings police station where another officer met me up there and finally collected the phone. I kept in contact with the police for updates regarding the case, but nothing was forthcoming. My brother was calling continuously, and if the sergeant answered the phone or whoever transferred the phone to the sergeant, they would either say an arrest would be imminent or tell him something to get him off the phone, but most of the times the phone rang off the hook. Years went by. I wrote to the Prime Minister, got no response. I wrote to the Consul General in New York, got no response. And I wrote to the Director of Public Prosecution as well as the Commissioner of Police, got no response. And when the Consul General of Miami was coming to Barbados at a point in time, after I had contacted him about this matter, he said he would raise it with the AG when he got to Barbados, and that he was going to Barbados in 3 weeks' time. And when he came back, I contacted him, and he said the AG said he would investigate the matter. Nothing happened. And subsequently, I don't know if it was the following year or the year after that, someone informed me that my case had been called up in court on 2 occasions, and I was not there. I was never contacted by anyone in regards to the police or the court that my matter was being heard. Otherwise, I had taken a flight to go there to report it. I would have made sure that I would have been in Barbados. And I was in shock to find out really that I was not contacted. Again, I sent a letter and a letter by regular mail and another email to the Director of Public Prosecutions to make her aware of what I had heard. And to this day, she has not responded either. And coming up to the last election, this was an embarrassing and frustrating process. And coming up to the last election, I decided to write a press release to inform everybody of what was happening, because subsequent to this, matters involving people who had similar cyber crimes were investigated, and there was an outcome, and nothing was happening to mine. And I sent that press release to a friend of mine seeking guidance. And somehow or the other, not somehow or the other, I know the path it took, it made its way to the Attorney General. And I presume that he was feeling that he may have become embarrassed by what was being exposed. And the next morning, probably before 10 o'clock, my sister was able to call me and tell me that the police from the Holton police station called her, wanting to know how soon I could come into Barbados to attend court. So I said all of that, and we went to court, and up to this day, what happened was just to appease me, because the case was adjourned, and up to now, nothing has happened. And that was just the same year that was the last election.
Miss Cole, hold on, Miss Cole.
However,
I just want to say you have 2 more minutes.
Okay, all right.
What you're saying, ma'am, is of interest. Obviously, you're speaking about the police. Realize that this is a legislative body.
I do understand.
And we're speaking about the bill.
Yes.
So
yes.
we really don't have oversight over the police. But we're giving you
relevant.
a little whiff, ma'am. We're giving you a little whiff, but also, you know, I want you still to focus and realize that your time is running out, because members can also engage you after you speak.
Okay. The reason why I stated all of that is to say that the law, the cybercrime law that existed then, and the one that is being proposed now that was just passed, offered me no protection, either of them. There is no protection from bad actors in the civil service or the parliament or wherever. So the old law offered no protections. I read the current one. It also has not addressed the issue. It offers nobody in a similar position any protection at all. There's no guarantee that they will have a day in court. And in conclusion, that I oppose the bill in its present form because it may have significant changes that would affect our constitution and freedoms of expression. And the idea of mass surveillance, I think, should not be tolerated in Barbados at all, mass surveillance or detention centers. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. Any members wish to engage Ms. Cole on anything she said or otherwise? Ms. Cole, you on at least 2 occasions said that this bill, cybercrime bill, will curtail freedom, the constitutional right to freedom of expression. And yes, there's a constitutional right to freedom of expression, but isn't that right curtailed and, surrounded, ring-fenced by certain obligations and limitations that, yes, there's a constitutional right to freedom of expression, but that right is subject to public interest and morality and laws of privacy. Isn't that the case? So if that is the case, why are you saying that, it threatens your constitutional right to freedom of expression?
So, in my opinion, nothing was wrong with the previous bill. I do not think what it does is that the reach of this new bill is wider and it can encapsulate many other things that relate to people's freedom. I think that if the previous bill had some areas in which it was not up to standard, that it should have been updated, but this one is way too wide and vague. Even if we have to try to discuss or try to figure out what freedoms of expression are at this stage, we have a problem.
Okay, but have you seen section 19.5 of the bill?
I had it up here. Is there something specifically you wish to tell me?
No, the cybercrime bill, 19.5.
I did read it.
Which says that there are defenses to an allegation of breach of the cybercrime bill. Defenses that are similar, the same as in defamation, are carried forward in this bill. In other words, if what you're saying is true, or if what you're saying is trivial, that you have a defense to a charge on allegation under this bill. If what you're saying is comment, so
Go ahead.
why therefore you believe that, your constitutional rights to freedom of expression are being breached? When you have those defenses, you gotta be sure, for example, that what you're saying is true, not because somebody is a politician, that you can say any and everything about them, that they're corrupt. XY is a crook. He took bribes and even bringing in the mother, as a lot of people do. What do you expect about XY? His mother was a prostitute anyway, so you can't expect nothing better from him. But then you can't prove either of those. Do you think that because you have a constitutional right to freedom of expression, you should be able to say that about an individual or their mother when you can't prove that it was true? Just using an example.
Go ahead.
Just using an example. You believe that because you have a constitutional right, freedom of expression, you should still be allowed to say that without, any penalty?
I don't believe in abusing my constitutional rights, and I don't think that anyone should take it lightly as well. However, I don't publish or write anything that I don't think is true, nor that anything that connecting the dots would not seem true. I would never do that. For example, if I can bring you right back to this very bill, if you were a lay person who's not familiar with the law, and you read this bill, as I did, and you read 23, 24, and 25, there is something missing between 23, 24, and 25, and it doesn't make any sense. So that is why my query is the surveillance and detention centers, because I read it and to me, it ain't look right. Something wrong there. So that is why I am querying that. But however, to reinforce it, I am not a person who goes willy-nilly trying to put things on the internet that don't make any sense and that are untrue. And I hardly, well, perhaps some people do it. And if they do, yes, I agree that they should be, that there is a law there should be a law for defamation. That's what I believe. And also, again, when I read this bill, the premise that came over is that you are guilty until you have to prove your innocence. Normally, it is the other way around.
No, ma'am.
That's the impression I got.
The time all standard of law and rule of law in Barbados is that you are innocent until proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt. There are few exceptions to that. I mean, I think possession of drugs, and I'm an attorney at law, ma'am, senior counsel, and there are 3 other lawyers in this room at the level of King's Counsel as well, leader of the opposition, and another accomplished lawyer, ma'am, and a top legal drafter, ma'am. So this bill does not shift the burden of proof, and it is still, you know, that any allegation before the court for any of these provisions has to be proven beyond reasonable doubt, ma'am. So don't be worried about that.
So,
and throughout the bill, it speaks towards intentionally and recklessly, or recklessly. In other words, you have to have the mental, the mens rea, we call it in law, to commit the offense.
so what is reckless then? If I call somebody a fool and they're not a fool, how reckless, how would you quantify reckless? How would you quantify that in terms of a scale of recklessness?
We have judges, man. You could appreciate the judiciary will, you know, weigh the evidence, etc. But if you call someone a fool, and I'm just engaging you a bit, ma'am. I mean, this is not a legal class, a law class. But if you call someone a fool, a court might very well say that that is trivial. I mean, it's within the context, ma'am, of why you call them a fool. That is the truth. But a court might say that is trivial, right? And that's the defense as well under Section 19.5. So, as I said, ma'am, it's not a law class we're conducting here. We wanted to engage you and have your thoughts. But I just felt that I needed to ask you that question on the freedom of expression. Okay? Are there any other members or any other members who would wish to engage Ms. Cole? No? Okay, so Ms. Cole, we thank you for your citizenry.
I thank you as well.
Even you're a part of our diaspora in New York. I assume you're born in Barbados. You speak like us, so you know we thank you for taking the opportunity to give your evidence. Okay?
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so bring on Mr. Weeks. Mr. Weeks, good morning. Can you hear us? Oh, he's now being let in. Okay. Hello, good morning, Mr. Weeks. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, sir. Welcome to the Policy and Governance Committee, Joint Standing Committee of Parliament, sir. We have here 6 members of the committee, 6 out of the 7. We have the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. We have Senator Walters. We have the Honorable Senator Lyndall Nurse, Honorable Peter Phillips, Member of Parliament. We have Senator Gregory Nichols and myself, Edmund Hinkson, Member of Parliament. So you are permitted for the next 10 minutes to speak on the Cybercrime Bill, on the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment Bill, on both of them, sir, as to what you think of these bills, if you feel that they can be improved in any way, your comments on them, sir. And after that 10 minutes, any member can engage you or question you on anything you said. So the floor is yours.
Before we start, sir, Mr. Chairman, might I inquire of you, just as a bit of background, why was it that other presenters have, I recall one of the government representatives made a presentation for almost 2.5, almost 3 hours, and individuals who are responding are only limited to 10 minutes. I wonder,
Mr. Weeks, we have rules. Mr. Weeks, hold on. Your 10 minutes has started. We have rules, sir. They're the rules we set.
Even there. All right.
And this is the Parliament of Barbados makes its rules. Can you state your name for the record, sir?
My name is David Weeks.
Okay, and what's your occupation?
I am a retired individual.
Okay, sir.
I
just wanted to be clear, sir. You said in requesting
permission.
permission.
My time, Mr. Chairman. Am I going to be allowed to present for the 10 minutes?
No, sir. Hold on, sir. Your 10 minutes. Yes, sir. I said that. You said in your request for an oral presentation that you live in exile. And I just wondered what is meant by that, sir, because, I mean, I thought we're a free society and you're living in exile. So I just wanted you to clear on that. What do you mean by living in exile, sir?
Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, I want to know whether that query can come after I make my presentation.
No, your 10 minutes hasn't started yet, sir. So just
thank you.
For the records, what do you mean by living in exile, sir?
I live in a circumstance where, having been firebombed in Barbados for a particular matter, my matter being that I brought the governments of CARICOM, 13 governments of CARICOM, to the law courts of Barbados, and sought there afterwards to get a trial to proceed for 17 years. Then I found myself firebombed. So I live in exile because I do know that if I do come back to Barbados, I will either be incarcerated for the different things that have been constructed to make sure that I find myself in prison, or I will be killed. The first attempt failed, the firebombing failed. So I am here living in exile because of that explicit reason.
Okay, Mr. Weeks, the floor is yours.
Let me just start by saying you would be very familiar with a quotation from from Romeo and Juliet, "A rose by any other name would smell just as sweetly." And what is presented in that statement is that what one says and the actuality, irrespective of what is projected as an outcome, what ultimately obtains is defined by virtue of the outcome. Quite simply, it looks like a rose, it smells like a rose, but what we are being shown here are the petals of the rose. I'm among many individuals who would caution Barbadians and reviewers alike to consider the petals of this rose that is being presented to the people of Barbados under the context of cybersecurity bill. There are some words here that masquerade within that bill, and attention should be brought to those: annoyance, inconvenience, embarrassment, insult, humiliation, intimidation, and anxiety. For on the one hand, there are justifiable issues that the bill addresses, namely illegal and reprehensible acts that require the enactment of laws to protect the rights of citizens, politicians, and the such like. I guess politicians are a subset of the citizens of Barbados. But I respectfully suggest that the new republic in proposing state endorse threats, and it both denies the rights of the freedom of speech. Forgive me saying freedom of speech, I should say freedom of expression, because freedom of speech obtains here in the United States. Freedom of expression is what obtains in Barbados. The Budapest Convention has certain provisions, and by extension, the Cybercrime Bill purportedly established based upon the Budapest Convention gives those three categorizations of substantive law, procedural law, and international cooperation as matters related to cyber crimes. But reviewers will see how definitely the reasonable parameters of the Budapest Convention are exceeded by our indigenous cybersecurity bill, particularly as defined by Clause 20, cyberbullying. Under 21, if we read in part, and I will just give an excerpt, a person who intentionally uses the computer system to publish, broadcast, or transmit data that is offensive. And I'm going to put those words which are important for my representation: offensive, pornographic, indecent, vulgar, profane, obscene, or of a menacing character, or causes any such data to be so sent for the purpose of causing annoyance, inconvenience, danger, obstruction, embarrassment, insult, injury, humiliation, intimidation, hatred, anxiety, or causes substantial emotional distress to that person, and the bill continues. You all have it in front of you, and certainly anybody can read it and so forth, but I'm making focus upon those particular words. I respectfully suggest that there's a disingenuous concatenation of these words being relied on here. The blindest man on a trotting horse can see what the words danger, injury, and hatred can refer to. But consider those other appended words in the lesser, indeed even puerile impact: annoyance, inconvenience, embarrassment, insult, and said other vapid terms. I respectfully suggest that there is a disingenuous concatenation here being relied on. The bill has been purposely mentioned danger, injury, and hatred with a hodgepodge of words of lesser, indeed puerile import. And I wouldn't go over them again. I know that you all are familiar with them. You all wrote it: annoyance, inconvenience, embarrassment, insult, and similar words. These delicate, emotional, and sensitive words, which are not criminal acts, but like the privileged exchange of your mother uttered in the lower house, might at best be subjectively inflammatory. And it raises the question of why have they been included and added here? I am reliably informed, not to say begs the question here, but rather it raises the question. It raises the salient question: why are these words so purposely being intertwined? Why use danger, injury, hatred with annoyance, embarrassment, insult, or inconvenience. And I will attempt to answer that same question and say that this concatenation is purposed to create a situation where its artful juxtaposition will be used by parties who seek to entrap the victims of the Republic. Now, let me repeat that part, the victims of the Republic. No defendant charged under this law will be able to delink those emotive words and will find themselves incapable of decoupling danger and injury from their charges. And in anticipation of upcoming questions, I expect that the question will be posed about if I want to delete injury and danger from the bill. And I preempt that question by saying no, but I suggest respectfully that as the bill is purposely written, citizens have to take all the words or none. And therein lies the petals of this cybersecurity rose, of any other name, Mr. Chairman. The subtle undercurrent of this bill is that it ostensibly states that Barbadians are free to transmit data as long as it does not defame others. But more specifically, while defamation is provided for in existing laws, this now includes a purpose plurality, expanding on the plurality of unnamed distresses appended to catch any and all dissenters. In a recent exchange, I remember another presenter, hypothetical example of defamation, made the statement where a fellow would call another's mother's a prostitute. I believe it was you, Mr. Chairman, who talked about given an example of the mother being a prostitute. So in a tangential vein, I would like the committee to consider this example, which won't use the vulgarity that other member of the House directed to another member, referencing the other mother's parts, underprivileged, of course. But let me give you this tangential banter. Suppose you and I, Mr. Chairman, we were to attend a hypothetical nightclub, and you or I spread news of the other individuals' dalliances to third parties. One is led to wonder if that truth being shared to third parties, while not causing danger or injury underneath the bill, but causing annoyance, embarrassment, humiliation, and generally discommoding either of us, if that will be given the expansive, or if given the expansive definition of this cybersecurity bill, it will activate it and cause either of us to be brought before the Barbados courts by the other aggrieved party because of embarrassment, because of annoyance. For such a query, I would answer yes. And I will go on further to say this, that depending on who we are as the aggrieved party, because of the puerile emotive conditions expressed within the bill, as the aggrieved party, notwithstanding the truth of your seeing me in Frontline or any of those nightclubs, I can easily seek to bring my matter, or you can easily bring your matter before the court. And though you only embarrass me, and you or I can find ourselves guilty of the immature provisions of the Barbados Cybersecurity Bill, because my remarks are offensive. Listen to this, 7 years or $70,000 because I offended you or you offended me. And our nation has been silenced from any type of dissent. So this bill has used two deft concatenations which commingle legal issues with subjective feelings claimed by an aggrieved party. For example, a politician or them friend, parties now protected by Barbados's equivalent of Thailand's lèse-majesté, enacted by a sympathetic magistrate. I beg your forbearance, and this is where I really and truthfully had wanted to make to close. I wanted to close and give a simple example to underscore how this fickle annoyance condition under the imminent cybersecurity bill can be enacted. So if I could, from this point of view, I need your assistance, your IT team's assistance, just to make something come on stream, and then there afterwards tie in the offense, tie in the issue of how someone can be annoyed by something that is that underneath this particular law and can seek there afterwards to put me in front of a court. Or anyone who in similar vein seeks to make representation or express an opinion which is not a popular opinion, but merely because of what you are presenting, it causes annoyance, it causes insult, it causes injury, or humiliation. I wondered whether the committee would allow me to make representation here and do that, if only for a couple of seconds. I don't know how much more time I do have, but I'm finished on this particular point.
Mr. Weeks, I'm not exactly clear on what you're asking us to allow you to do.
I'm asking you to share my screen.
So don't you have to share the screen, sir?
Well, I was just asking for your IT team to give me assistance in sharing my screen. That was what I was told in the email. I was told in the email from you that the IT team will give assistance in sharing the screen. Will give direction and assistance. Zoom is controlled by the IT department. So just mention that the committee and they will assist. Does that not still obtain?
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
My understanding is that in the Zoom, there's an option in the Zoom that you go and you share your screen. And once you do that, it will show up on our end.
Okay. Share. Photo. Very good. Is that being shared with you?
Yes, it is there.
Good.
But Mr. Weeks, we're not going to allow you any such sharing. We're here to discuss the Cybercrime Bill and the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Amendment Bill. So we're not allowing this, sir. Hold on, sir. So your presentation, please take that off. Is your presentation at an end? I need to know on the bill itself, sir.
Yes.
That's what we're dealing with.
The point that I was finishing on is on the bill itself.
Yes.
Where someone makes a transmission via the computer, and underneath the cyber security bill, someone makes a presentation. And when they make that presentation or they transmit this information, it causes an individual, it causes person, I realize you won't have yours on a relay, but it causes someone who receives this to feel annoyed, humiliated, and those puerile words, that is what I would like to be able to address. I made this specific representation to say that yes, where there's danger, where there's injury, where there's defamation, Cap 199, 1997 provides for those things. But to the degree that there is an aspect where someone makes a representation that brings in those other verbs, those other words, annoy, humiliate, and the such like, Mr. Chairman, that those are the 2 points I wanted to make here. One, to indicate that you do have situations where, when interpreted by particular parties, can and will be interpreted in such a way which denies individuals the right of free speech and free expression. Free expression. Let me say free expression because I heard one of your colleagues at one point in time, one of the committee members say that there was no such provision underneath the laws of Barbados, but free expression is provided for underneath the laws of Barbados. And on that note, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to have mentioned things about Frontline and so forth. No, I do not mean to intend any affront to anyone if I have mentioned things that would be disturbing, but just to make those examples. There's one final point. We are moving very slowly towards Thailand's lèse-majesté. As nicely as this thing is patterned, as nicely as it is presented, as I said, a rose by any other name would smell just as sweetly. These verbs and words are the petals of that rose, and I would beg that greater consideration be given for this bill, it be rescinded, and a new bill be presented that is much more harmonious of the rights of free speech and free expression of Barbadians and citizens and persons and residents living within the fair country of Barbados. Less we may prevent. And on that note, Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much for allowing me to make this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Any members wish to engage Mr. Weeks on anything he said or otherwise? Yes, Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Weeks.
Good morning, Mr. Thorne.
If you called me Ralph and I called you David, would we still be allowed to go on?
I'm not sure. The chairman will decide as to whether we will be able to speak in that particular way, but I will address you as Ralph. If that is allowed by the yes. Chairman, most assuredly.
Yes, I make bold to say that for both of us, this is a personal delight. Yes?
Yes.
Good. I wanted to ask a few questions because for me, this has become a process of my own education. And that's why I'm pleased that someone of your quality has visited the presentations. So I'm going to ask some simple questions so that at the end of this exercise, I would have a clearer idea as a committee member as to what is the substance and essence of the objections. I think I know what they are, but I want to seize this opportunity, David, to inquire of you by a few simple questions. I take it you are opposed to the bill?
Very much so.
Good. And I take it you are aware that this law, in its form as drafted here, has been passed in other jurisdictions. I don't ask that to excuse what is being done by this Parliament. It's a series of questions that I think is probably the Socratic method by which we will arrive at some answer, ultimately, as to whether the bill has merit or not. So I'm just asking, permit me to ask these questions so that the discussion and or understanding of the discussion will make some progress as between all of us. So these are simple questions. They're not tendentious in any way. I just want to be able to come to a settled view, not as to the nature and content of the bill itself, but I want to come to a view as to what is the protest, what is the nature of the protest out there in the public. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm not being tendentious. I'm just seeking what is the state of mind of people who object. You following me, David?
I am following you, Ralph.
Good, good.
I would not be presumptuous to speak on the public, but within the small cadre of persons who I converse with, both within the diaspora and there in Barbados, the concern is not so much the ambit of the law that other countries that have passed this law, the other countries that have passed this law that they have made provisions for, but more so the subtlety the subtlety within which if I have offended you, if on by mere the substance of something that is conveyed via the computer, and that's why I sought to use that particular example that I provided, that the chairman asked to be taken down. I sought to say, if the sentiment of individuals is that their rights and their privileges that were normally part of these fields and hills beyond the recall in Barbados, they're seeing that they're being taken back, that if someone opens their mouth and says something like Mugabe land, and it compromises a little mean, you can actually see, or maybe I should ask the question, do you not see, Ralph, Casey, the chairman did in actual fact give you the KC as opposed to the SC. But do you not see where there is room for an interpretation or misinterpretation where such a meme could be brought into the court because it causes annoyance, it causes humiliation, and
we're all always entitled, I'm sorry, we're all always entitled to subjective interpretation. The court ultimately has that duty. I want to say to you, David, that there's this saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right. So don't allow that to influence your answer. And my question to you had been this: how does it appeal to you that other countries may have or have in fact passed similar legislation? How does that influence your argument? Are you going to say 2 wrongs don't make a right? Are you going to say that there are peculiar circumstances in Barbados that militate against the passage of this law? Keep an open mind on it. I certainly have an open mind, I can promise you that. And some of the protestations and objections I find highly persuasive. And it does not matter to me that other countries have passed the law. I'm concerned about the passage of the law here. So I'm asking you, how does it appeal to you that other countries have passed the law? Will you say 2 wrongs don't make a right? You're muted? Oh, sorry.
You got muted. You got muted just now.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I was asking you, how does it appeal to you that other countries have passed this legislation?
My position is this, Ralph. While other countries have passed that legislation,
yes,
I do not believe that that weighs upon a Bajan, a Barbadian, any Barbadian who has come up in Barbados where our navel string buried should not be subjected to such a pernicious law, which by cover of night is taking away the basic rights of individuals to speak, because what I have been hearing is that when you are within groups of individuals speaking in the context of Barbados, now there's a fear merely to write something within the computer format because individuals can send that to a third party and it be construed, if the law is passed, it be construed as a chapeau underneath which individuals can be tormented, can be prosecuted under that law.
Okay.
So I'm not really interested in what happens elsewhere.
Right, right.
I believe that as Barbadians, we have a right to preserve
our cherished freedoms. Our cherished freedoms.
Our cherished freedoms.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Ron.
All right. The other question I want to ask is this, and I think we're leading up to this point, and perhaps you have said it yourself, that law must exist in its own peculiar culture, and let me say in its own peculiar political culture. That if you have a culture, well, you have this law, which is which allows a prosecutor to be fairly selective. You following me?
Yes.
The offense,
yes.
Any criminal offense, the offense of murder takes place, you know who to charge, the murderer. breaking and entering takes place, you charge the person who broke and entered. Sexual assault takes place, you charge the molester, the sexual molester. This offense offers to a prosecutor the opportunity to be widely selective, or let's say to be selective. Because as I've said in here on the last occasion, this offense, these offenses take place every minute of every day. And you're not, just give me a second, please. You're not going to charge 50,000 people who go into cyberspace and commit the offense. And therefore, a prosecutor has the opportunity to decide who he will charge, who he or she will charge. Yes? Yes. Is that a concern of yours? We know that, we all agree that assaulting people in cyberspace is wrong, and that there should be some sanction against it. Is it one of your difficulties with the legislation that it permits the state to select those against whom it will charge? Is that one of your concerns?
That is my main concern.
That's your main concern?
That is my main concern.
Right.
That we have reduced our laws in Barbados, a place which has come through so much, where our forefathers, well, particularly as we consider the period prior to and following our independence in 1966, we are moving very far away from what the forefathers perceived or what Arabar perceived, and those individuals within that cluster perceived as these fields and hills beyond we call are now our very own. This law, or those clauses, those verbs within there, they expressly allow for individuals to take away those rights and cherished freedoms. That is what I think, that's what I'm seeing there. A colleague called me some months ago when this was being contemplated, and he says, "You have offended the powers that be. Why is it that these two things are being so aggressively pursued?" And I said to that individual, my matter of 17 years, when I recognized that I have not been able to get a day in court, I said that the only place that I can go to is to the United Nations. Now, before we go any further, Brother Ralph, when I say United Nations, I am speaking about the United Nations Human Rights Commission, not the United Nations Secretary General. So let there not be a situation where people are saying, making a comment about that particular position. So you got your rights abrogated. You no longer have rights underneath the court system in Barbados, and you reach out to the United Nations Human Rights Commission. And that in and of itself causes further problems. So I would respectfully suggest that when an individual such as myself will continue to make representations to those bodies, will continue and will not pause in making those representations, that can cause certain parties to be offended. And that is the reason that this law is being pushed with such alacrity.
David, have you looked at the Computer Misuse Act, which is on the books and has been so for many years? By way of comparison, have you looked at the Computer Misuse Act, which I think this legislation will repeal?
Yes, but look more carefully. You're not necessarily looking at the improvements, because let me just say that...
Just let me develop the question. And the question was this: do you consider that the Computer Misuse Act has served its purpose, or has outlived its usefulness? Pardon the cliche, has outlived its usefulness.
It has, because the issue...
Short question, short answers. I don't think the chairman will allow us too much longer. So that if it has outlived its usefulness, and that this legislation is intended to replace it. Do you consider that this legislation has gone too far in potentially trampling the rights of citizens?
Yes.
Yes.
Most assuredly, yes.
Most certainly.
It has addressed the fact that the environment with computer abuse has totally changed from
Yes.
when those laws were passed. But in its enthusiasm and zealousness of particular parties, it has divided itself. What is the word? I forget the term about where reason divides itself from justice. It becomes over anxious, it becomes over expressive, over enthusiastic, ultra virus.
Yes.
It is now going into an area where it is saying, yes, these things need to be addressed because these have changed. But while we are at it, let us also look at seeking to keep individuals from speaking anymore. They can't offend anyone.
Yes. Now, sometimes we, and when I say we who are politicians, say things rather unwittingly. And the chairman may not mind that I remind us all that he made reference this morning to politicians. And I've heard that more than once, this possible view that this legislation may be intended to offer some additional protection to politicians. I haven't heard anybody say priests. I haven't heard anybody say policemen, garbage collectors. And whenever I hear a reference to a category that suffers abuse, I hear politicians. Do you think that any legislation should focus on the protection of a particular group or particular groups? Well, let me ask that differently. Do you consider that this legislation may be intending to give overprotection to politicians? And I'm asking these questions very objectively because I want to get an essence as to how the public feels, the public here and the public in the diaspora. Do you consider that this legislation may be tending to offer particular protection to politicians?
I most assuredly do. And I again go to a particular, the lèse-majesté, to say it forbids the insult of the monarchy. And please note, I did not say it forbids the insult of the republic, but suffice it to say that Thailand's LM laws is amongst the most strict regulation on free speech in the world as it relates to that explicit group, that subset. If you were to say that the law of defamation currently provides for anyone, but I am one of the individuals who particularly believe that this law is for the protection of politicians and their friends.
You think so?
And their friends.
That's a criticism that you make of this legislation. Yes or no?
It is.
Yes, that's a yes.
That is a yes.
Thank you very much. And as I said, my questions are not intended to be tendentious, not to be taken a view. I want to know what is the view of the public. So, Mr. Weeks, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Thorpe.
Chair.
We reverted to our surnames. So
The
yes.
chairman was becoming a little concerned at our informality, but we can now jointly declare that we've known each other for a certain number of years, which we don't wish to disclose. And I was wondering if the chairman recognized you as well.
We will not go there relative to the chairman and his lawn tennis days with his big service and
Long
knocking
pass.
the ball off the court. But
Long
nonetheless,
pass.
yes.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Weeks, thank you for your contribution. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions because I'm hearing from you some criticism. You are speaking about I understand it, the provision that makes for malicious communications, correct?
I'm speaking to the cyberbullying clauses 20, 1, 2, 3, and that is what I'm speaking to. Not your particular filtering.
Cyberbullying. The provision that makes for cyberbullying, that's what you're talking about, section 20, clause 20, sorry?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is a person who intentionally uses a computer system to publish, broadcast, or transmit data that is offensive, pornographic, indecent, vulgar, profane, obscene, of a menacing character, or causing any such data to be sent out, for the purpose of causing annoyance, inconvenience, danger, obstruction, embarrassment, insult, injury, humiliation, intimidation, hatred, anxiety, or causes substantial emotional distress to that person. That is the provision you were referring to. Larry?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're saying that this is trampling on rights that people have?
I'm saying that certain parts of it, certain verbs that are there included, that they are trampling on rights of individuals. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
What is that right of the individual?
The words that I'm speaking about are the words inconvenience, annoyance, embarrassment, insult. Those are the words. I made the point of putting up my fingers and using quotation marks, the visual representation of quotation marks, to isolate the words that I'm speaking about. And I'm saying that as it reads, the singular interpretations therein arising, while danger is understood, while injury is understood, while hatred is understood, I would suggest respectfully, Senator Nichols, that these words, annoyance, inconvenience, embarrassment, and insult, those words really and truly have no place within the bill.
So that a statement made to a person normally outside of the computer context that is causing annoyance to a person, is that permitted under law or should be permitted under the law?
Under the Defamation Act, I am sure.
I'm not talking about defamation. I'm talking about a statement intended to cause annoyance and disturbance and humiliation to a person.
Let me, you see, in many respects, you're asking for a qualifier for a particular word. And I am again falling back to the point of the interpretation, the subjective interpretation of these words. Annoyance, insult, humiliation. Those are not words. If I defame you, do I defame you by using an annoying word? Do you remember the words, your mother's pudenda, that was used within the house some time back?
Yeah, no, you don't have to keep repeating the same point you went, man. I'm not going to direct you to answer my questions, yes or no, like Mr. Thorne. Hang on a minute, Mr. Weeks. Hang on a minute, Mr. Weeks, please. Because it is very easy to say that the words are broad and vague, as some people are saying, and are subjective. But when you are crafting a law, let's just say in a more forensic term, when you are drafting a law, it has to be drafted in a way, I'm asking if you agree, that would almost capture the intention of the drafter is to capture the criminal behavior that you're trying to prescribe within the society.
Is humiliation criminal?
Humiliation is not criminal in the sense that if I am humiliated by something, but if a person intentionally tries to humiliate me with a view of something that's indecent, vulgar, profane, obscene, and menacing, there are other qualifying words within the context of the bill. Like for example, if a child or children playing cricket, and I'm sure you probably might be familiar with the game, if I say to children engaging in pre-game banter, I can let you down tomorrow, right? We bowl enough bouncers at you. that could be, as you were saying, humiliating, or it could be intimidating. But will the reasonable man consider that to be criminal?
You're coming through with a lag.
So I'm just asking, would you consider that to be criminal?
No, and that's.
So let me give you another example, David. If two consenting adults make a video of them engaging in a sexual act, where they both consent to the make of that video, and one of them releases that video to the public, or threatens to release that video to the public in order to gain some particular advantage, or in order to humiliate them or intimidate them into a particular position, would that be lawful in your view? And if it is lawful in your view, how could we craft the language that will allow the state to ensure that people who engage in these acts, some people might think that they're horrendous, some people might not, but generally the state doesn't get involved in the privacy of people's homes acts between consenting adults. If it were an adult and a child, that's a different kettle of fish altogether. But when that video is threatened to be released, or to your employer, I mean, people get these kind of emails all the time, these phishing emails and stuff like that, and fall victims to the scammers on the internet from all over the world, Eastern Europe and some places in Western Africa. But if two consenting adults make a private video, which is shared between themselves, and there is some reason that they disagree or the relationship doesn't proceed in a normal way, and for example, the one party tries to gain advantage over the other, how would you find that objectionable to the extent that we should make it a crime? Revenge porn, as it is popularly called. And if so, how would we capture that other than by saying a person who intentionally uses a computer system to publish, broadcast, transmit data that is offensive, pornographic, indecent, vulgar, profane, obscene, or of a menacing character, or causes any such data to be sent for the purpose of causing annoyance, inconvenience, danger, obstruction, embarrassment, insult, injury, humiliation, intimidation, hatred. How would we capture that?
You happen to have presented something there which, mindful of the rights of individuals, the individual's rights, revenge porn falls into the area of pornography. What I'm respectfully suggesting is that as it presents itself as these individual within the context of a jigsaw puzzle, we can pick out the parts. We can be extreme. This law presents for the picking out of particular parts where you're going to say it does not have to be a revenge porn, but merely because of the fact that it did in actual fact cause an individual a level of humiliation, a level of, so there are going to be degrees. And I would turn that question back to you and ask you, when it was being crafted, was it crafted with those explicit situations in mind, or was it crafted to say, let us pick and purge that a prosecutor can choose which of these words, or the plaintiff can choose which of these words to say it caused me great humiliation?
So you're saying that a person in our society does not have the right anymore to complain when they are faced with a computer image or a computer broadcast or the transmission of data that is intended to cause some harm to them, some annoyance or inconvenience. So this is really intent of the person who posts this information online, who transmits this data, that the person who's affected by it should have no recourse in the law. That's what you're saying. Because
And to answer your question, in the way that it is posed, because of the gray area that we are dealing with, I would say yes. You cannot.
So annoying people by posting and transmitting data by a computer system that is obscene and vulgar, which is in section 2020.
You see how you cut what you just did.
So you made your presentation, I heard you. I just trying to get clear what you are saying, right? So in relation to section 20, clause 21, a person who intentionally is called cyberbullying. This is the one clause that you admitted just now that you had a challenge with. Cyberbullying. A person who intentionally uses a computer system to do these things, for your view, if it causes annoyance or humiliation or intimidation, then that is permissible because it could be taking it too far. So because it can be taken too far, it should not be a crime. So that the criminal acts that can occur will occur because you feel that if you were to use intimidation, humiliation, or annoyance, those would be going too far. That is your view.
No, what I'm saying is that you have expressly, you have saw again in picking a number of circumstances, and I recognize this relative to the way that the bill is written and the comments that come out of the bill. Immediately as someone talks about it, somebody talks about pornography, and they add a particular subcategory, which is going to cause individuals who are listening to it to be justifiably angry and say that the law.
Oh, okay, if you're uncomfortable with pornography, can I give another? I can give another example. I think Mr. Williams may mention that because I'm not on about the pornography thing, and I'm not thinking that is an extreme example.
I can't finish. You have not allowed me to finish, Senator.
No, but you're accusing me of doing something, and I think I have the right to clarify for the. Hold on, sir. Hold on, no, sir. You're accusing me of taking out pornography, and I use the example of revenge porn. But let me give another example because I not have to rely on that. A school has a beauty contest, beauty pageant, Miss whatever school, St. Jude School. And one of the contestants faces emails, social media posts where, for leading up to the competition, body shaming, fat shaming, telling them about the face and stuff, with the specific intention for that person to suffer some kind of anguish, some kind of humiliation or so. Is that permissible? Should that person have no recourse against persons going online with the intention to cause them some kind of humiliation or embarrassment in a beauty show?
Well, I'll answer your question by saying this. Sir David Simmons, when he was in the review committee, presented a 2-year-old pornographic piece of material, which he said he was prepared to share it.
I'm not. I asked you a specific question. I know, but at this stage, the members of the committee get to ask questions, and if you answer the question I asked, we'll be happy. And perhaps the chairman will allow you to expand at the end, but I just want to answer the question.
And I was answering your question by suggesting that particular circumstances, when taken in context of the pornography, the cyberbullying, there would be particular aspects of it that I could actually take a specific situation and suggest the same thing to you that you're suggesting to me. And if I ask you the similar question, you would similarly be.
Well, I asked you two questions. I asked you if a specific thing would be objectionable, and if it were objectionable, whether or not you would be able to get it into the law without using the terms intimidating, humiliation, or embarrassment, and those terms which which you have picked out as words that are too broad. So I'm asking you, I give 2 examples, and there could be more, because we can't sit down as a drafter or lawmakers and conceptualize every criminal act that is likely to occur in the future, particularly in something so pervasive as technology. We're talking a lot about cybersecurity, but this is about cybercrime. This is a cybercrime bill. So in drafting the bill, you accuse the legislation, the language of the legislation of being broad. And you accuse in your answer to Mr. Thorne's question that this was being designed in a manner so as to protect politicians, members of the political class, and their friends. So that is your view, and everybody's entitled to their view. But I'm asking you now, is the language too broad? And how would you, if the two examples I've cited, revenge porn or body shaming in a beauty contest, or people playing a game of cricket and you're sledging your opponents online as young people would do with the intention of affecting how they perform in a game or something, is that objectionable? And if it is objectionable in your view, how do you deal with it within the context of cybercrime? Those are just the two questions I'm asking. I'm sorry if I had to explain the context a little long, but that is where I'm coming from.
I am hearing what you're saying, and I am respectfully saying that there are going to be circumstances where, as you have pointed out, that you can have revenge porn, you can have situations where the law needs to be able to address. But I'm also suggesting, as it currently is written, you have too far east is west. And from what I am seeing there, you've gone too far east. If you want to come down to more specifics, there are other places, other laws that you can depend on and refer to and redraft what is currently there. I'm just saying that to have it as expansive as it currently is, it is going to lead, and has already started to lead, to the point where dissent is being killed in my fair country of Barbados.
So if you were to, let me give you another example, Mr. Weeks. I'm coming back in because this is my question time. And you're making the same point again. And I'll give you another example. You receive an email which tells you that they have some photograph of you in an indecent place, or it's exposed indecently. And you need to make some deposit in somebody's Bitcoin account or send some money wire to a particular account. And you ignore that email. The email tells you this is the second warning. You ignore it. Third and final warning. Would you agree that that is an email that it hasn't transmitted anything that's offensive yet, or pornographic, or indecent, or vulgar, or profane, or even obscene, because the image or alleged image is not made disclosed to you at that point in time. But under clause 21B, this would be for the purpose of causing annoyance, inconvenience, danger, embarrassment, humiliation, and intimidation, anxiety. If it didn't come under this section, as you just suggested, what other law or what other provision in the existing law would such conduct by some troll on the internet, would that be covered in our law that exists?
Part of your example, Senator, part of your example, you dropped off a part of your example about the email. I heard part of it, but then the transmission stopped. So if you would care to just...
sorry, but I'll just try to go quickly. Somebody sends an email threatening to release some photograph or some video of you. Say, for example, we have a video of you watching porn on the internet, and we're going to send it to your work colleagues or your boss or something like that if you don't transmit some money over the internet. That causes annoyance, right? That causes humiliation, intimidation, correct?
It's an extortion, an act of extortion, and I'm sure that there are laws that provide for extortion currently within the laws of Barbados. Am I correct? You can tell me, you're the lawyer.
Mr. Weeks, sorry. The courts don't have, well, we're speaking now of the effectiveness of this legislation, and it's being coupled with the Mutual Assistance Act, which would now allow the court to have some jurisdiction over acts that affect Barbadians, even though they're not perpetrated on Barbadian soil, because of now the pervasive use of technology. So that we can talk about extortion, but if I say that a Bulgarian national is, or somebody from Nigeria, not meaning to disparage those two countries, but those are just two examples I cite, is making these demands on you. How then can the law in relation to extortion effectively deal with that situation? Are you saying then that the citizens of Barbados who may be exposed to this on the internet should no longer have or should not have any protection like other societies which are putting cybercrime laws in place, but because the common law in relation to extortion that has been around for centuries is satisfactory? That is what you're saying.
No, I have not. That's not what I've said. I started by saying, my first statement was that there is a need. Do not believe that I am against the laws. There are laws, there are justifiable issues. That's what I started. My first 3 minutes, I said, on the one hand, there are justifiable issues that the bill addresses, namely illegal and reprehensible acts that require the enactment of laws to protect the rights of citizens. I don't know whether you were there when I was saying that, but I
was here. I
was
here, and I think I can assuage some of your concerns that I too have my own issues. I've said it publicly. I've said it here in the committee on more than one occasion, with some of the tightening of the language that I think we have. And I think on the last occasion, I believe that the law is a start, and that this process, this parliamentary process, which is new to us here in Barbados, can bring us the best version of the bill that is necessary to achieve that balance. And not because I'm an attorney at law, but I do believe when we don't get the balance right as a parliament, there is a body that is higher that can rule on whether that balance has been struck. And as far as I'm aware, that
is why, Senator, I was saying that I am waiting for 17 years. I'm
not getting into your individual case, because we can trace stories. You probably need to get a good lawyer. Right? If you had a good lawyer, you wouldn't probably have that problem, right? So I ain't getting into your individual case at all, right?
But is this not an individual opinion, or is not the public being invited to
you should probably speak to Mr. Thorne, but he's a little busy now, so you might not be able to get him. One last comment, though. You spoke about in your presentation, or going back to the point you made in your presentation about freedom of expression. And I for one, think that the freedom of expression we have in our current constitution is ample. It is well set out. It is very broad. It is a right that the courts, in my view, will interpret in a broad and liberal way, as is the norm in interpreting constitutional rights and freedoms. But the Constitution does create the freedom of expression in those broad terms, but it also creates the ability of Parliament to make laws that can be inconsistent with those rights, to the extent that they are reasonably required in the interest of defense, public safety, public health, public order, public morality, or that are reasonably required for the purposes of protecting the rights and freedoms of others. And that is something that we tend to lose, because in our zealous nature to be able to say what we want, we feel that we can just trample over the rights of people who do not think, look, or speak like us. And therefore, I will say again in this committee, any law that is brought as a limitation on one's freedom of expression that comes outside the express limitations in the Constitution, and these limitations have been adjudged over and over since 1966, when we have had these as permissible restraints on the rights. The test of proportionality is the basis on which a court will determine whether a law has gone too far. So that in our understanding of these rights, I know you can look at the American Constitution, where there are no textual or written limitations on rights. Our Constitution creates the right and also permits for laws to be passed by Parliament, who makes laws for the peace, order, and good government of the land. But those laws have to have what we call reasonable restraints. And if this bill is outside of it, of those reasonable restraints, then I very rarely believe that people will not have a difficulty in going to the courts and having the law struck down. We have courts that strike down laws in Barbados that are unconstitutional, laws that are passed by Parliament. So that this notion that we are now all of a sudden become undemocratic by the mere passing of a bill, not even a alteration of the Constitution, but a bill, an ordinary piece of legislation cannot take away constitutional rights. And I think that the view that is being expressed to mislead people, and there perhaps may not be a proper understanding of the wide scope of constitutional rights and their express limitations in the very Constitution of Barbados. Thank you, Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Senator Nichols. Mr. Weeks, I just wanted to clear up one point here. Yes, and I recognize when you came on that you are who I thought you were, my senior at secondary school. I did refer to, single out politicians, but could be anyone. And I want to go back to your statement. You believe that this bill is being passed, or this legislation being enacted to protect politicians and their friends. I could have said public figures, because often these days people go online and are abusive to judges. Judges are not politicians, including the Chief Justice. So it is always easy for people to say, boy, politicians passing law to protect themselves and their friends. But I've seen many, many times people on social media abusing people who they may have been in a relationship with a short while ago, saying what Bajans would say, outing them. And they certainly aren't politicians. I don't know if they're politicians' friends. Politicians supposed to have friends all around. The constituents supposed to be their friends. So I don't know if you're including that, but I don't believe you are. So I think that it is a bit unfair, and I totally would want to totally disagree with you that the nature and object of this bill is to protect politicians. Because at all levels, I see people on social media receive social media posts, people in all categories being cussed and abused and humiliated. So I just wanted to put that on record, sir. And even though I'm getting the impression you have difficulty not with the principle of section 19 and 20, but with some of the language in it, contending that some of the language is too vague. But that, as you said in your opening, as part of your opening, you do see the need for this legislation in principle. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. And just essentially to say that it needs to be tightened up. There are certain aspects of it that they can be abused. And my concern is, yes, you do need to do this, and certainly to go back to Senator Nichols' remarks, there are certain things that you need to address. The laws have changed, the times have changed, you need to be able to address that. But at the same time, there are certain aspects of this that clearly go into a shade of gray that is extremely concerning to any and all citizens. It should be concerning to he of himself has his reservations about it. I have my reservations, and I respectfully suggest that based upon the ambit that obtains relative to justices and who knows who and how specific systems are utilized, leveraged, and otherwise abused, that this, what is being contemplated here, it will be, we will live and see. But I suggest that this is going into a shade of gray that we are going to go back and we are going to regret if changes are not made to it in its current format. But again, I thank you very, very much. I realize that you gentlemen have given me well beyond my 10 minutes, and I am most appreciative of this to make my presentation and to make my points about what should be considered. It's not written in stone. Go back to it, make considerations for the individuals who are speaking about it, particular aspects about it. The law is not, man is not made for the law. The law, I forget. Yes, man is not made for the law is made for man. That is the consideration that I'm kindly suggesting here, that some review, some accommodations for what are the general concerns of Bajans.
Okay.
Relative to their freedom of expression.
Mr. Veach, we thank you. And you, just, you note that at the start, when you started to say about how you only had 10 minutes, so you have had 75 minutes, sir. So that is why I told you don't worry about what other people say. We make our rules. Okay? So
okay,
thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Come, sir. Come and sit down here. Welcome, Mr. Howard. You have asked for this committee, the Governance and Policy Joint Standing Committee of Parliament, to hear you on the Cybercrime Bill and the Mutual Assistance Criminal Matters Amendment Bill as presently drafted. And we have, pursuant to that, we have invited you to come before us and to speak for 10 minutes maximum on these two bills or either of them. And after that, any members here can engage you on these bills. And all, the committee is fully constituted. All 7 members are here at present, sir. So you could state your name for the records and your occupation.
I am Timon Howard. I'm currently a student at the University of the West Indies, Cape Hill campus, and I am a spoken word artist. Okay.
What are you studying at university?
Human nutrition and dietetics.
Okay, all right. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon to one and all. I am pleased to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to come and present before you. As I would have stated, I'm a spoken word artist, so I'm coming before you today as a performer. And I saw it fitting that I perform my duty on oration, not quite the norm, but spoken word poetry. So, more specifically, as a performer, artist, a creator, and a user of the social media. Don't go so close. Yeah, I sound a bit muffled. Here it's better. Fantastic. Right, so I've been following the proceedings from last Monday and this Monday as well. I want to say well done to Janine Butcher, Kim Morris Stewart, Neil Harper, Daniel Weeks, or David Weeks. Dr. Ferdinand Nichols. And I particularly like where Dr. Ferdinand Nichols said, freedom is not the right to do what you want, but is the power to do what you ought. I think that was a brilliant statement. And the critical function of freedom of expression, as expressed from a rights-based perspective, is that of a moral right, as the UN would state. From a non-rights perspective, is more so viewed as a necessity. Yeah, whether it's a necessity to uphold democracy in a democratic nation like this, or to combat government corruption or incompetence, etc. That would be the purpose of freedom of expression. And a source such as that, like Stanford, their Department of Philosophy would state that a tyrannical state that imprisons descendants acts unjustly, violating moral rights, even if there's no legal right to freedom of expression in its legal system, which is a far contrast from ours, whereby we do subscribe to, freedom of expression as a natural human right, and we tend to try to uphold that. At this point, we also commend this committee and the government. In a technologically developing society, it's very important that we develop legislation to suit. My issue is, as you can tell by now, perhaps, lying in the nuances related to freedom of expression, particularly in Section 20, subsection 1B. In Barbados, we have an unfortunate history, particularly of silencing our revolutionaries or forcing them off the island, and I can say I fear this may further aggravate that problem when I think of persons like George Lamin or Clement Wickham, or when I think of men like Clement Payne. Payne, who was a union organizer and a highly effective one, as one source says, the Caribbean Beat magazine. He arrived on the island beset by economic problems and hardship in the wake of the Depression. Sugar prices had fallen catastrophically, and plantation owners had responded by slashing wages. And Payne, influenced by the Black Power ideology of Marcus Garvey and the growing radicalism of Trinidad, delivered a shocking message that the black and poor majority in Barbados should organize themselves in a union and confront the planters and their allies. Confront them. Not that Payne advocated violence. His motto was educate, agitate, but do not violate. But he grew big crowds with his speeches to hear fiery denunciations of injustice and deprivation. And the colonial authorities were predictably hostile to this firebrand orator. And the constabulary warned him that he was under observation each moment of the day and night. And we know that when the labor unrest broke out in Trinidad in 1930s, Payne was eager to tell his audience what the authorities would have rather have swept under the rug. And the whole of the Caribbean, he said, was on the move, and justice was there for the taking. And he organized a union meeting, the Barbados Progressive Working Men's Association, and at that point, the government would have taken action and made it absolutely their job to send him back to Trinidad. And you can read more about that in the Caribbean Beat magazine. But when I think about men like Gabby too, I ain't know about you, but if I was Jack there, I would be shedding tears if a man as mighty as Gabby cast stones at me. I risk at a label that he had tear, probably. And Jack could get his jacket straight, but if Gabby were to have gadgets and posting up to Freely Beach, calling names so freely, I wonder what would happen to he if this kind of thing was passed in 82 or even 83. I mean, as it stands now, we could see how soca being hit hard and far away from being hard-hitting social commentary. That's why it's just jam and wine and jokes in this country. Labor laws done got things choked up tight compared to a scene like Calypso and TT, where artists like Crow Crow can sing, express dissent, and foul play a bit more freely without being caged. But I can pause on that. Back to Dr. Nichols. Right, he brought something off the press from 2018 when election time was setting and words was flying high, empty promises full of hot air like balloons rising like the bread in the oven at a bakery. He said this one come from the leader of opposition, now PM Mia Moore Motley. Gotta love she. She said, today is about sending a message that the people of Barbados will not allow anybody, neither Labour Party, Barbados Labour Party, Democratic Labour Party, private sector, to intimidate. Not ever again. You have been raised to think for yourselves, and you have the right to speak out, and you have the right to speak out without somebody trying to unfair you in this country. So today is equally about reclaiming for Barbadians the right to express themselves in an environment which is where fear is removed. And if ever the time comes that you give us the confidence to lead you, we too must ensure that we never rule a government to unfair or cause fear in this country. This is the solemn promise of the Barbados Labour Party. I don't know about you, but if there's an intent to keep that promise, the broadness of Section 20, subsection 1B seems unwise, and my challenges lie mainly in the philosophical approach to understanding the fundamentals of the importance, invitation, and infringement of freedom of expression. A universal human right which right now seems to be being made to bow beneath the guillotine, to have a critical piece of its being be removed. And I am dressed in a monotone fashion, for I am prepared, if extremely perturbed and reluctant, to mourn our great loss, and much less prepared to pay the great cost. And I'm not trying to move you to tears. My colleague before, Kimar Stewart, did a good job in asserting that this is not an emotionally guided issue. It is very hard for emotions to be found criminally damning. But I'd be damned by my own conscience if I say nothing if a man can say something true or false on socials, and because the person impacted by the use of his computer system is intended to be annoyed, inconvenienced, obstructed, embarrassed, humiliated, insulted, or feel anxiety, he can be damned. And Mr. Chair, you have said many times that you're an attorney at law, and earlier too, I believe you said there are other lawyers in the room, correct? Yes. What is your issue with filing such cases under the coverage of the Defamation Act and leaving it at that? Establish policy with clear defenses instead of allowing a web of ambiguity to be a trap for the judiciary you have constantly kicked the can to. Really. My understanding is that the goal of the bill, as it seems largely, is to bring improvement. If the way it is currently drafted is highly able to be abused in the palms of powerful players, where you may criticize an individual in some position of authority responsible to the citizens of this country for, in truth, neglect of their duty, they remain not subject to change in their ways, but you subject to charge, and you may not be able to afford the bond to be unbound before you are found guilty and fined up to 70,000, or redefined from a concerned civilian to criminal in your sentence of a term to 7 years hard time. I bear all of this in mind. And I also bear in mind that we are all beings with egos and insecurities. To forget this is to forget humanity. To reject this is to embrace a pointless naivete which can only lead to a pitiful existence in a strange form of arrogant, ignorant madness. I would urge the committee to not this negligence nor unbelief consume you. And yes, it states in Section 19, subsection 5, that subsection 3 of that same section is covered by the defenses of the Defamation Act. However, that's not the case for Section 20, subsection 1B, as far as I see it. The defenses in question being that of truth, opinion or fair comment, and privilege. At this point in time, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. As I had stated earlier, I don't want this to generate into a law class, but you have basically focused on Section 21B, and let's look at it. You have it there. Now realize that Section 21B is subscribed by Section 21A. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm getting the distinct impression you're taking Section 21B to stand by itself and to say that anyone who intentionally uses computer, electronic device to cause annoyance, etc., that is the offense in itself. But that isn't what Section 20 is saying. In other words, realize that there's no or there. It is in section 21A. You're publishing this offensive pornographic material, or B, for the purpose of that, like how some sections like 19(1)A intimidates a person, or B, threatens. You following me? There's no or there in 21, separating 21A and 21B. So you take them together. So in other words, this head of cyberbullying, this section, is saying that an individual who intentionally, in other words, they have the mental capacity to do it, they want to do it, they intentionally do it, they publish or broadcast something that is offensive. In other words, you know, it isn't good. And in my submission, coming therefore within the limitation of your constitutional right of freedom of expression is pornographic. I mean, why should someone, you know, you've had a relationship with somebody, and regrettably, because I've said in Parliament, pictures of nudity taken, relationship finished, and now somebody wants to send these nude pictures of the former partner online. Indecent. I mean, we can't encourage indecency, and there are laws against that. Profane, obscene, vulgar. So you're publishing something that is one of these, all right? And we could argue and debate as to whether, you know, some of the words go a bit too far. That's up for debate, and obviously the committee, that's one of the mandates of the committee, to look to see if it's too wide. But you're doing those things for the purpose of causing annoyance. You follow? It is not that they are disjunctive. They're together. And I want to, because you're focused on that section, so are you saying that an individual who, to use an example here given, is a pornographic freak, 3 o'clock every morning, they're getting out of bed and watching a lot of porn movies, and, you know, and nobody knows that. That is not known to the public. The public sees this person as some upright person. Person might be a priest doing that, but they're an adult, and that is what they're doing 3 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, they and their wife, let's say, or their husband for that matter, because it goes both ways, they break up, and now the wife or husband wants to use that against them and publicizes that on social media, right? To say that this person is a fraud, play that they're so upright in the church every Sunday, but up every 3 o'clock every morning watching pornography. Do you think that that is right? And that a person should be allowed to do that, to cause annoyance? And again, like I said, you might debate that all of these words in 1B are too vague, some of them, not all, as the previous presented it. Do you think that they should have the right to do that? And to even say, look, if you leave me, I'm gonna do this. I can tell the world, because when you put something on social media, you're telling the world. I can tell the world who you really are. I don't mind you. Do you think that that should be allowed?
I think that, judging by the reaction from some members of the committee, it seems to be an amusing situation.
No, sir, this is, no, nothing about this committee is amusing, sir.
Oh.
This is a serious committee, sir.
Okay.
And this is real life, sir. This is nothing,
Definitely.
no amusing. This
Okay.
happens.
Okay,
So-
so am I responding now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed otherwise from the laughter in the room, however. And I wasn't particularly leaning towards that aspect of the subsection either. However, if it is, and you say you're a lawyer, so I suppose you would be better able to tell me whether that is really and truly a criminal offense or a civil matter. And
No,
is it
I'm
worthy of...
asking
or-
you,
no,
I'm asking
Wait,
you
and this is my
if
response.
you feel that someone should be allowed to do that, and it should not be subject to the criminal law.
Right. So what I'm saying is that in coming here now, that seems to be a moral offering that you're expecting me to make in terms of my judgment of whether I believe that the person should do that or should not do that. Whether it is or is not a criminal matter, I am not studied to know whether it should be or not. However, I would venture to say that 7 years or $70,000 for that when the Defamation Act only covers what is it? How much is it for defamation? Is what? 3?
No, sir, 2 points here.
25,000?
Two points here, 2 points here. Because it's being repeated outside of this committee as well. When you see a fine and an imprisonment term, that is maximum. Under our Interpretation Act, all right, you have, anytime you see this is the maximum. But that doesn't
Even if it
mean-
doesn't say up to?
No, sir.
Regardless.
We have a top legal draftsperson here, and she can confirm what I'm saying.
All right, cool. I just-
No law says up to, all right?
Okay.
We don't write legislation that way. That is the maximum, and under our Interpretation Act, that is what it says, and that's how we draft it in Barbados. So a judge can, for instance, say that, yes, you're found guilty, but I can just reprimand you and discharge you. That is the judicial authority and discretion. And we have separation of powers, as I'm sure you know, between the legislation and the judiciary. A judge can say, I'm going to fine you $500. In other words, once you're convicted under any of these provisions, right, it doesn't mean that the magistrate or the judge has to sentence you to 7 years in prison or has to fine you $70,000. So I want to assure you of that, sir.
I appreciate that.
And when you spoke about the defamation, sir, just, as I said, it's not a law lesson, but, you know, I have to tell you for the sake of the record, sir, that this legislation, this bill, once enacted, it is proposing to repeal Section 34 of the Defamation Act, which is criminal libel, all right? That there will no longer be, defamation would no longer be a criminal offense, okay? So just wanted to point that out to you too. But essentially, at least I'm interpreting your response that, you know, you haven't addressed your mind to, for example, the example I gave you, which is what Section 20 speaks about. It isn't that you look at Section 21B in a vacuum and that anything that causes annoyance, thing that somebody thin-skinned and the context insults and because they can't take insults, they go to a police station and you before the court. It is subscribed by 21A.
Cool.
Okay?
The repeal that you were speaking of in terms of the Article 34, that would mean that the current imprisonment of the up to 12 months or a fine of up to 2,000 I'm seeing would no longer be in place?
Section 24 of the Defamation
Article
Act
34, yeah.
would be repealed.
Right, which means that would no longer be the punishment there, no?
It will no
And
longer
instead
be
it would be what is being listed here under the cybercrime bill instead.
Yeah, and cybercrime, realize, is within a certain context, all right? By electronic means, computers and systems, etc.
That being said, addressing not only the scenario that you would have presented, but the statement you would have made in saying that you're not seeing it in a vacuum. Well, yes, the situation that you would have presented can arguably be justifiably tried under this, and that's okay. There are also other scenarios which also may not necessarily be right to fall under this act and be tried as such. However, due to the broadness, as you said, of it, which we can argue in terms of the words being too broad, such as a word like offensive, which is very vague, and then being backed up by the others of annoyance, inconvenience, trivial things like embarrassment and such, could be cause for concern. And I'm sure you could probably agree.
Okay. Any other members? Yes. Honorable Leader.
Yes.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Chair. Tymon Howard, that's your name? Yes. I'm going to ask your age, not to be discourteous, but to make the comment that I'm going to make. How old are you? Don't answer. I want to commend you. I assume you're very young. And I want to commend you for coming into this forum at your age. It is normally a forum that in which you find persons older than yourself. So I want to commend you for the courage that you've displayed in coming here. I also want to commend you for your mode of presentation, spoken word, which is a very powerful medium. I take it that if you do spoken word, you're reading, and that is a part of a crisis among young people. Again, I did ask your age, and you were sensitive about answering. I suspect you'll answer before you leave, though. Our young people are not reading, and I don't blame young people alone, because it's the system, it's the technology that seems to be discouraging reading. So I want to encourage you to continue to read. Sometimes you may even consider, young people in this country may even consider putting down the gadgets for one day and reading. The personal and intellectual discipline that is involved in that is highly developmental. And if you are not reading and you're doing YouTube, for you personally, I would like to recommend the lecture by Akala. As a spoken word person, I'm sure you know that name. A-K-A-L-A, the English spoken word.
Oxford, yeah, I think.
Yes, the Oxford Union address. If you have listened to it once, go and listen a second time. You will find that that is extremely helpful in terms of your personal and intellectual development. So, young Tymon, I congratulate you for coming into this environment, even at your tender age. I commend you as well for using the medium that you have used. That takes courage, because they don't do spoken word in here. And you have proved to everyone in Barbados and across the world listening to this that spoken word is valid. It's a valid mode of communication. We've understood everything you've said. It is very effective. It is very powerful. And I want to, as I said, commend you and encourage you to continue spoken word. Many years ago, they used to do it at the museum on Sunday evenings. Adrian Green communicates very, very powerfully. So I want to ask you to continue to be a standard bearer for young people and to continue to be a voice that is socially and politically conscientious, because coming here proves that you are socially and politically conscientious. Again, it is something that we are losing among our young people as they get lost in the other spoken word and the other behavior. So, Taimon, I admire what you've done here today, and I congratulate you. Thank you very much. Would you say your age now?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the encouragement, though. I appreciate it. I'm not sure if there are any other questions particularly related to the bill itself or the presentation.
Senator Nichols.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chair, at the risk of delaying the members from going out to lunch,
Right.
I noticed that the presenter here is an artist, and I'm particularly interested in whether he had any views as to how, whether the bill puts any undue restrictions on artistic license. And if it does, how can we protect vulnerable persons from cybercrime if I were to say that was not the intention of the bill, to put restrictions on artists, comedians? Let me give a little context. Comedian will ordinarily lampoon people of the political class, people who are in public life, and to the enjoyment of the crowds and the audiences. And let's say, for example, that is put online, televised broadcast on the internet. Could that be a crime? I doubt very much that that would be the intent of the bill, but do you see that that is a possibility based on any reasonable interpretation of the section? And if so, if you have any suggestions as to how we might be able to segregate that from, if we can segregate that from any other of the offending provisions. I'm interested in your views on that.
Great, thank you very much for that, Mr. Senator Nichols. I hear genuineness in that approach and that question, yeah? And I do see it in terms of if it is that we are being artists and creatives, and as I mentioned, some artists in there, Croker in Trinidad, here, Gabby, and other oral presenters who may not necessarily have always been the softest with the blows or the approach that they took to addressing certain issues. And as I would have stated before, being in an age of technological evolution, whereby we are using the social media to push the content that we create, the artistic license that we have, that is something that I'm concerned about in terms of, due to the words of such as offensive. Yes, there's other things which are very valid, and like I was saying before, I commend you all for the bill and for the committee itself, like as he was saying with the example of the pornography and such. If it is that you're releasing pornographic content of someone that's obviously and clearly wrong and incorrect and punishable by law as a criminal offense, I 100% agree with that. But when you say something like just transmit data that's offensive, persons take offense to a lot of things. Yeah, sometimes persons take a lot of offense to things that are true, right? And in an age where it is that, I mean, we are a democratic society, and as I prefaced my piece by stating in terms of the fact that a function of freedom of expression can be thought, aside from it being a human right fundamentally, right? Being human beings, we want to communicate and be able to listen to others and make decisions and process thoughts. But aside from it as a human right, in terms of a functional perspective, maintaining and upholding democracy, persons need to be able to voice dissent. That is one of the critical pieces of freedom of expression. And so when you see something like something that's offensive or something that causes annoyance or intended to cause annoyance or inconvenience or obstruction is something that you can be punished for, held guilty for as a criminal offense. And as other persons would have referenced before, this going on your record and affecting you as a person, your reputation, your character, etc., with no recourse or recompense for that, I believe is extremely concerning as an artist. So, yeah.
So are you suggesting that we should carve out something for that artistic space? That's what I'm trying to get at.
That would be fantastic, right? So, and even if I go about my day and I'm not necessarily, performing per se, the speech itself, being able to have that dialogue and that discourse, being able to do what we're doing right now and share thoughts which may not be, I don't know if I agree with the lady over here, if she agrees with me, if I agree with the gentleman here, if he agrees with me, he may say something that offends me, but at the end of the day, being able to share that on a fundamental level, a base level, is important. So yes, for the artist, but also for common people, that you don't have to be able to have a way with words to be able to express yourself and articulate yourself and have the opportunity to hear what other persons as well, at risk of them offending you and at risk of you offending them. That's all a part of communication and being able to process.
We live in a difficult time because everybody contends that their view is the right of all of us, or the rights of all of us are viewed through the lenses of the person who is speaking or who has the mic. But I want to ask you a question which is touching us on a little bit more fundamental. Because as I keep saying, we have to get the balance right, and we not always get it right. But there is a view by some in the society who have had to engage with that there's a lot of pedophilia in the society that is hidden. There's a lot of grooming that is hidden, particularly in our schools. We don't want to admit it. There is a lot of extortion and exploitation of young people by adults. And one of the more effective means of communicating with children and young people is through technology and the social media platforms that they use. And what has come up to me is that there were a number of suicides in Barbados that have been attached from anecdotal evidence last year as a result of cyberbullying in the society. And when you get close to family members who are affected by these and friends and so forth, you see and hear these stories, but there's nothing really that you can do about it at present. How do we arrest this? Because there is always, I go back to what we said to people who look different to us at school when we were going to school, how we treated each other. It wouldn't be tolerated today. And when I was telling my children yesterday how I acted as a prefect at school with juniors in the school, it wouldn't be tolerated today. So that, what in your view, as you're accredited as a young person, how do we manage that tension by, at the same time, we need to create a law that protects the vulnerable. But at the same time, we don't want persons who are in public life or persons who are in important positions in society, not necessarily politicians, but persons who wield power and influence, to be unaffected by the slightest criticism that there might be a pastor in a church or a congregation where it is viewed that his influence on the church is too dominant and there can't be any views that must contend and that kind of stuff, and people feel real psychological pressure from trying to move outside the norm of the church and that organization, etc. We see this every day. How do we protect these people at the same time without diving in and creating a bill that, as the leader of the opposition says, could possibly criminalize everyday activity? And is it that everyday activity has now become normalized because it's on social media? Should we allow that as an acceptable norm where people can do the worst, as they would say, on social media, because we know that that is the media in which people hide and communicate. Well, it really isn't hurt nobody, but sometimes it hurts people. So I just want to hear your views on how we get that balance right, because what's going on in my head is that the bill is being criticized for good reasons and bad, but I want to hear at the end of the day how we achieve the right balance.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you said a lot that we can hold on to in that, particularly in terms of trying to create some kind of legislation that helps those who are vulnerable without creating other unnecessary vulnerabilities in that sense. I would say that that is definitely something that should be addressed and looked into. I have stated before, I'm not studying law, so I would say that is the kind of mindset or understanding that then should be carried into the discussions by the persons who are the policymakers, the lawmakers, etc., who are more on the academic side, mentally and background-wise equipped to then work on policy making and stuff like that. I would say it is saddening, as you said, in terms of the suicide rates and such. It's interesting to see the development over the years of society in relation to cyberbullying, from it being, well, they could just put down the phone, you know what I mean, to where it is now that we're actually trying to address it because of the results that we've seen. It may be a bit sad to see that it had to be at the cost of a few deaths for it to happen. But nonetheless, I'm glad that we are at this point now, whereby we do see that is a critical issue to address. How that will happen, I would say that this board and this committee rather is a very important part of it, wherever this process goes afterwards. But I can't necessarily say, all right, well, scrap this. Or I can't necessarily say, all right, so my proposal or my legislation is Article 20 should say, etc. I can't necessarily say that. In relation to the child grooming, Mr. Springer here would have given the example before to, I believe it would have been Mr. Stewart. I could be incorrect in terms of
This morning, Mr. Lewis,
last week.
Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart talking about monitoring. His concern was monitoring.
Okay, well, you're talking to me, right? But yeah, it was to either Mr. Lewis or Mr. Stewart, the example you had given in terms of the child grooming and the example of waiting for a crime to actually be committed.
That was Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Lewis this morning, right? Waiting for a crime to actually be committed before it happens. I do believe that there can be programs and probably instituted in place so that students, programs in place so that students have persons to reach out to. Because in the same way with actual physical grooming and abuse, sometimes it would be the uncle or whoever it is. Well, my uncle has come by sometimes and then like you tell the mother or whoever and then they don't believe you or whatever, that kind of stuff, and then things go too far. That's stories that you hear all the time. So in terms of that, having programs that students and like young persons can actually reach out to actually speak out, being encouraged to speak out with campaigns against this kind of stuff, like, no, this is not normal. It is not normal for you to be getting gifts from a 40-year-old man who's come by when you was 12 every Saturday and do things to you that you know is supposed to be happening to you, and then just give you a gift and say, but don't tell your mother, like, that's not normal, right? So being aware, like raising the education, and the awareness of like, this is not okay. And you have places that you can go to actually get help when this stuff is happening to you. That will take you seriously, that will investigate, and that will actually bring some kind of recourse as much as is possible after, that has happened to you. As much as recourse can ever be gotten, in that sense. So yeah, that's just one suggestion in terms of, yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Howard, we thank you for coming. I'm sure that I could speak on behalf of all of us to say that we wish you the best in terms of your studies, your future, and, to encourage you in your talents and spoken word skills. Okay? Thank you for coming.
I appreciate it, and once again, thank you for the opportunity. Blessings to everyone.
Okay. Okay, so members and other staff, Parliamentary Council, we're going to break here for lunch and resume 2:15. Minister Marcia Carroll, who, and I've spoken with Honorable Leader of the Opposition, who will wrap up these oral hearings this afternoon. And then, you know, under any other business, we'll decide. Obviously, we're going to have to ask the Senate for an extension of our mandate, because our mandate expires, I think, is this Thursday, the 16th, because it was 90 days from February the 16th. And, you know, so we'll deliberate on that issue after Minister Carroll has concluded, okay? So lunch downstairs, Clark? Okay, thank you.